January 8th, 2000, kicked off not only a new year, but a new series of NFL playoff football. On this day, we'd see the NFC and the AFC get in their first slate of wildcard games. On the AFC side, the second-seeded Indianapolis Colts, led by their second-year quarterback Peyton Manning, waited for their divisional round opponent, while on the other hand, the top-seeded Jacksonville Jaguars had to wait another day for the result of the Dolphins and Seahawks game. The Colts waited on the Buffalo Bills, hosted by the former Oiler team, the Tennessee Titans. In their first year as the Athens of the South, the Titans would make their first postseason appearance since they made the jump to Tennessee. Led by Steve McNair, whose early season absence would leave the offense to rely on the following season's Madden cover athlete, Eddie George, Tennessee would finish with a 13-3 record, one you would typically see at the top of conference rankings, but only good enough to sit them in fourth of the AFC. They were an above-average offense with a middle-of-the-pack defense, but not to be ignored. On that defense was eventual Defensive Rookie of the Year, Javon Curse, who led rookies with 14.5 sacks on the year, a rookie record that still stands to this day. Their opponent, second in the AFC East, was the Buffalo Bills. Now, while you may think of the 1990s Bills as the Jim Kelly team, this team was the one led by Wade Phillips and Doug Flutie. In their final season of the millennia, Buffalo went 11-5, backed by their stiff defense. Speaking of defense would be a big factor in this game, with the game's first score being a safety from Javon Curse, and each team only scoring one touchdown apiece. The Titans would hold on to a 2-point lead after an Al DeGreco field goal with 1:48 left in regulation, until Buffalo drove down the field to put their kicker in a position to ice the game. Feeling like they had it in the bag, the Bills sent Steve Christie out to kick a go-ahead field goal on third down with 16 seconds left on the clock.
Steve Christie from 41 yards. Yes! This is our house, man.
Christie put it through the uprights, and it seemed like Wade Phillips, the coach who had already made a questionable decision entering the game, made the right call to send his team to the next round. But Jeff Fisher was about to make an even better call of his own.
Magical season to this point. If they do, they need it now. Christie kicks it high and short. Going to be fielded by Lorenzo Neal at the 25. Pitches it back to Wycheck. He throws it across the field to Dyson.
He's got something.
30,
He's
40,
got something.
50.
He's got it.
40.
He's got it.
20. 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.
One of the most unbelievable endings in the history of the NFL.
The Music City Miracle was born. The Tennessee Titans, in their first season after shedding the baby blue and red, had just made their franchise's most historic play ever. Just 16 seconds before, the Bills were celebrating on the sideline and looking ahead to Indy. But after a miracle, the Titans were headed to the divisional round. As for the Bills, this loss would stick with them for quite a while. They would not return to the playoffs until the 2017 season, where they needed a miracle of their own to earn a spot in. The Titans would then go into the house of the AFC East champs in the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, led by young gunslinger Peyton Manning and the NFL's leading rusher in Edgerrin James, the Indianapolis offense was a problem. Manning would throw for 4,135 yards and 26 touchdowns, but in his early days, the Sheriff had a bit of a turnover problem where he threw 15 interceptions. While he wouldn't throw one in the game against the Titans, he would throw for a rough 19 for 42 through the air, where the Colts struggled to get anything going on offense. When it came to the Titans, though, they had no problem finding a way to get yards. When McNair couldn't get it going, Eddie George saw an opportunity and ran with it. Literally. He would finish with 162 yards on 28 carries, helped out by a 68-yard touchdown in the third quarter. For the second game in a row, the Titans only allowed one touchdown en route to another playoff win. They would need this defensive success against their final conference opponent, division rival, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, whose sixth-ranked scoring offense was led by quarterback Mark Brunell and running back Fred Taylor, were looking to add to their dominant season with a Super Bowl berth. The Jags' elite defense was led by Pro Bowlers Tony Brackens and Carnell Lake and rounded out by first-team All-Pro linebacker Kevin Hardy. They would be tied for a league-high 57 sacks, and throughout the 1999 season, they had success against virtually everyone, winning by an average of 2 touchdowns a game that season. However, there was only one team that they could not beat in any of their matchups. Can you guess who? Well, here's a hint. After 3 tries, they could not get one win against this team. If you haven't guessed it yet, this team was the Tennessee Titans, and nothing would change in the AFC Championship. The Titans would decimate the Jags 33-14 after forcing 5 turnovers. The Titans would ride the wave of their defense into a matchup where they would need it more than ever. Super Bowl 34 versus the St. Louis Rams. But hold on. We're getting a little bit off track, because if it weren't for the miracle in the wild card round, we wouldn't even be discussing the Titans in the Super Bowl. Now trust me, we're going to get to that another time. And now that I say that, let's ask ourselves, what if that play didn't happen? What if the Titans didn't even make it past the first round? What if there was no Music City Miracle? Let's take it back to that game on January 8th. Let's say the Titans don't have the lateral play drawn up, and they don't return the kick to win the game. The Bills move on after winning on the road versus the Titans, and now we have a few different possible outcomes that I want to look at. Of course, it all starts with the outcome of the Bills and the Colts matchup in the divisional round. The Bills and Colts shared a division in the AFC in 1999, meaning that they would play twice a year. The teams would split their season series and be 1-1 going into a third matchup during the divisional round, but this would be the first playoff game between the two as division rivals. If the Bills did eventually fall short to the Manning-led Colts, we would see the future AFC South Division foes go toe-to-toe in the conference championship when Indianapolis would take their third-ranked scoring offense into Jacksonville. We could have seen Peyton Manning in his second year clinch his first berth in what would be multiple career Super Bowl appearances. A potential matchup that could have seen 2 duos that were the finalists for both MVP and Offensive Player of the Year honors. While Kurt Warner beat out not only his teammate Marshall Faulk, but both Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James for the NFL MVP voting that season, Marshall Faulk would beat out the other 3 for the Offensive Player of the Year voting. But as likely as it was for the Colts to get into this position, the Bills still may have been able to beat the Colts in the divisional round. The Jaguars were coming off a 62-7 mauling of the Bills' divisional rival, the Miami Dolphins, and in this timeline, the Titans were already handled by the Bills in the wild card round, so based on the Jaguars' performances up until this point, it was pretty likely that we could have seen the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that wasn't even in existence at the beginning of the decade, topple a team that dominated a good portion of the 90s and get the Super Bowl appearance that they're still chasing to this day. However, in the original timeline, the Jaguars did not play to their typical standard in that conference championship. Had they played that way against the Bills, we may be looking at a different story. The Bills could have found themselves in the same position to end the 90s as they did to open the 90s. 9 years to the season, the Buffalo Bills could have clinched their 5th Super Bowl appearance in as many aforementioned years. Maybe the prophecy would finally be complete for the franchise and the fans who had been so close to the mountaintop years before. Or would it all come crashing down again? Because the Bills weren't playing just any team in Super Bowl 34, they were playing the greatest show on turf. The team who would crush the Bills' dreams once again, sending them home for a record-breaking 5th time. Now that's just a timeline that affects everyone else. But what about the Titans? Well, like I had rambled on about earlier, the Titans would go on to make the Super Bowl. While it was a Super Bowl they would go on to lose, it would be their only appearance in the big game to this day. It would wipe off 2 of the biggest plays not only in the 1999 postseason, but 2 significant plays in the league's history. History that would also affect the man who scored the miraculous touchdown himself, Kevin Dyson. His name would not be immortalized in team history if it weren't for that play. Because when you think of the name Kevin Dyson, you think about that very play. You don't think about the guy who ultimately had an underwhelming career as a pro, despite being selected with an early pick. Or you'd think of the guy who proved that football is truly a game of inches. There was so much that was changed by the Music City Miracle, but this is all just speculation. This is all for our imaginations to decide, because we can't change anything that happened, no matter how much fans may or may not want to, but all we can really do is think, what if?